One thing that nearly every viewer of Andor can agree on is that the music score did not sound like other Star Wars media. And even as composer Ludwig Göransson has already taken the music in new directions, the music for this show by Nicholas Britell has given us sounds we never thought we would hear in the galaxy far, far away. Today, I'm going to explain one of those specific sounds which have been these bending pitches throughout the series. This is Star Wars Music Analysis.
Do it.
The effect that we're hearing is now commonly referred to as wow and flutter. However, these terms are actually referring to two distinctly different sounds as well, which I'll get into. But both distortions of the sound were originally discovered on old gramophones, turntables, and cassette players. These audible phenomena occur when issues such as a warped or off-centered record, worn belt, or other variants change the speed of the playback momentarily. When this happens at higher frequencies, it can create the effect of a piano sounding more like a harp as strong attacks are lost. This is the portion referred to as flutter. However, when this effect occurs with lower frequencies, the pitch tends to bend. This is the effect known as wow, and this is the portion that I want to dive a little deeper into for this video. Now, if you haven't watched my breakdowns of the music in each episode, use the link in the upper right of your screen or in the description down below to see everything that's occurring in this show. I consistently highlight moments in those breakdowns where Britell uses this effect, and it tends to commonly come up during moments when characters are in some way disoriented, confused, or dizzy. Britell is making heavy use of the pitch bend function on his keyboard here. It's what gives that shaky and sort of retro sound to the music, and as the TIE Fighter does a flyover, the music again utilizes the pitch bend like earlier episodes. It comes back moments later as Lieutenant Goran is faced with the Empire's savage murder of native cultures, and it becomes a very dizzying and disorienting effect and sound overall. In addition, the wavering pitch bend returns as well, again reflecting that silent terror and dizziness of the moment. The first experience that I can personally remember of hearing wow was in my 8th grade art class. I remember the teacher playing a video for us on a Laserdisc, which is strange because in retrospect, this should not have happened with a Laserdisc unless that's the way the music was recorded or possibly something was wrong with the player. But in either case, I don't remember the teacher's name or what the video was about, but I do remember that the sound of the music was really annoying to me at the time. The movie had a lot of string music that simply kept going out of tune and then immediately back, but this was a common occurrence in playback devices until only recently as music became digital with CDs and beyond so that nothing physically moves to create the vibrations of the music. But why do we hear these distortions as pitch bends in the first place? In order to understand this, we have to explore the basic physics of sound first. Whenever we hear a sound, whether it's someone speaking, footsteps, music, or any other sound, it's our brain interpreting vibrations in the air. These vibrations are interpreted as sound waves in order to help us visualize sound. As we look at a sound wave, there are a few properties to consider. The height of the sound wave is connected to the intensity or volume of the sound. Taller waves are louder while lower waves are quieter. The shape of the sound wave is connected to the timbre of the sound or the way the sound sounds to us. This is how we can tell the difference between a trumpet and a clarinet. But the third property of the sound wave is its length. The wavelength of a sound is connected to its frequency, or what we commonly refer to in music as its pitch. As the length of the sound wave becomes larger, the pitch or frequency sounds lower to us, and as the length of the sound wave becomes shorter or closer together, the pitch sounds higher to us. So now let's consider this as we look at what happens on a cassette tape player. If the tape sticks or slips slightly while being pulled through the player, this will momentarily slow down the playback of the sound since the tape is being pulled through the player slower. And keep in mind that even though the record player slows down, the speed that the sound wave travels remains consistent. Therefore, as the music slows down, we are going to hear each wave rise and fall more or less frequently. And our brains will translate that into higher pitches for more frequent waves and a lower pitch for less frequent waves. Now, if we consider what that means for our sound and music, the slowed down signal will translate into the waves taking a bit longer to occur. This will translate into each wave of the sound being slightly longer or stretched out as well, and so, to our ears, the frequency or pitch of the sound has been slightly lowered while this occurs. But then the tape player catches itself and returns to a normal playback speed, which then returns the wavelength to its shorter length and speed and returns the pitch to its earlier version as well. This effect will often recur over and over again with a defective player or tape, as it would with a defective record, turntable, or gramophone as well. And so we would hear a somewhat consistent sound that seems to be out of tune music to our ears, wobbling in and out of tune. As I mentioned before, this was common in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s in playback devices, and very often when you listen to old devices and albums, you'll hear this. I find this interesting because even though the electronic sounds of this score give it a more modern feeling than the Romantic era classical orchestral scores of John Williams, these manipulations of the sound actually draw us backwards to a very different era, and it feels like older technology than the high quality recordings made for all of the other Star Wars media. It actually sounds and feels retro to us, and in some ways older than the score to A New Hope, which in the Star Wars timeline would actually make sense. However, during our mid-20th century, many artists, and probably most notably the Beatles, used this effect intentionally in their music to add to that strangeness and uniqueness of their music. They would have done this by manually controlling the playback of a tape and then recording the result of that manipulation. Nowadays though, artists such as Britell can simply use a plugin for DAWs like Ableton, Pro Tools, or Logic that will give this same effect, and they can digitally control parameters such as the severity and frequency of the wow and flutter. But because of its prominence in the second half of the 20th century, this effect typically gives a very retro vibe to the music, as it harks back to those defects of earlier playback devices. When Britell pairs that with other retro sounds like the synthesizers, we get a soundtrack that sounds like something straight out of the 70s and 80s. Notably, this was the opposite of what Lucas in many ways wanted originally for Star Wars. He wanted something that felt very familiar to his audience, and yet not modern, and so he decided to have a soundtrack for a futuristic movie that felt antique but familiar. Because of this, Star Wars doesn't actually feel as sci-fi as other movies in the genre. Instead, it feels close to us and familiar, and we have an easier time relating to the characters. But that was over 40 years ago, and what felt futuristic or modern then can now sound antique to a modern audience. There's been a lot of debate about the appropriateness of the soundtrack for Andor, and I would love to know what you all think as well. Tell me in the comments below and let me know if I've missed anything. Admittedly, I am a classically trained musician, so when we start diving into electronic effects, I'm not as well versed. So if there's something I said that was wrong, please feel free to correct me down below. Consider checking out my Patreon page using the link in the description, where you can help support this channel for as little as $1 a month, or download PDFs and MP3s of projects as I complete them. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to learn more about the music of a galaxy far, far away. And as always, may the be with you.